British couch in the background is just my favorite.
You like it? Okay, I got that a long time ago before Brexit happened, and then Brexit happened, and we were all a bit like, shit, should we cover the couch? I don't want people thinking I'm a leaver. Anyway, we kept it, but it's not quite as cool as it was back in the day, that flag.
Yeah, that's funny. I still think it's a cool design for a couch, so I love that you have it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I'm really excited to talk with you. I was actually at the Tuner premiere screening in Toronto.
Oh, amazing!
When it first played here.
That's fantastic. Were you at the one with Dustin and Leo and everyone?
I think so. So I know I remember that the director gave you a nice shout out.
He did,
at that
yes.
Q&A.
So yeah, we were at the same screening, because I know there was a press screening right before that. But
right. No, I was really excited to be at the one with it's the first screening here in North America, I think.
Yeah.
And the cast and crew for the Q&A. It was a really cool experience.
Awesome. Yeah. Good. Glad you're there.
Yeah, well, what's interesting? So I was just doing a little bit of research before hopping on here, and your parents are actors.
Yep.
And your father, Ralph Bates, played Victor Frankenstein, which I thought was so interesting with the new Frankenstein movie.
I know, right?
That just played here at Toronto.
Yep.
My question is, did you see Frankenstein while you were here?
I did not, unfortunately, but I did watch my dad's Frankenstein a lot, and that movie was directed by my godfather, Jimmy Sangster. And Dave Prowse is in that movie. Do you know who Dave Prowse is? He was the original Darth Vader.
Oh,
and there's like a whole thing with Dave is like eating a pigeon. It's one of my earliest memories of that film. But yeah, there's my parents were in a lot of Hammer horror movies back in the day. So but yeah, I did think about that movie when I was there, because I think Frankenstein played right after we played.
It did.
It was in the same venue.
You should have just kept your seat and
yeah, I know, right? I want to get to the party, so
That's fair. It's interesting seeing that your parents are both actors. Did you ever think about acting?
I thought about it for a minute. I was actually in a sitcom with my father called Dear John. I played his son, and I was in 2 or 3 episodes of it, and that was great. I was only 10. And then I started going to the odd audition, and I think maybe my second or third audition where they made me sing my name on one foot and then like my address on the other, and I just hated it. And I was like, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, all right. And we literally left that audition, and he went and bought me a saxophone, and that was sort of the beginning of that whole chapter of my life. But then, so I haven't really touched acting since then, but I did just star in my wife's vampire film. My mother is also in it, so that's a whole other thing. So we're in post right now on that, so watch this space. But yeah, I do seem to be dipping my toe back into it for some reason.
It is so cool how entrenched your whole family is with the filmmaking industry.
Yeah, and horror specifically, it seems.
Horror specifically.
Anyway. Yeah.
So the movie we're talking about today is not horror, but it is kind of crime thriller. And I'm very curious to learn more about your approach to scoring this movie. It's gotten rave reviews from everyone that I've talked to at TIFF. I loved watching it. Such a great experience, and that like thriller vibe definitely is very felt in the score. But there's also this interesting jazzy thing going on with the score as well. Totally. Let's start from the beginning. When you're approached about this project, like where do you even start with like conceptualizing what this movie should sound like and how that feel should be?
So I guess the very first conversation that we had was this notion that the score would exist as a separate thing from the music that's in the film. So there's obviously there's a lot of on-camera music that was composed by Marius de Vries, and the idea initially, I think they wanted it to be tonally similar, but then I came on board quite a lot later, and Daniel was pretty clear, like this needs like a very separate voice, like a different thing, and it's serving a very different role to the music that's played on camera. So we talked about that, and I was kind of like, that's all that makes sense, but maybe there should be some sort of hat nod to the fact that Dustin's character is clearly a jazz musician, and there's a huge jazz component in the source music and also in the story of these characters. So I said to Daniel, what would it sound like if Bill Evans had modular synths? And he was kind of like, do that. So that was, I think, probably how I got the job, but also, you know, that was like the beginning of it. Like, okay, so electronics, like let's do that, but also have some sort of bedrock of, you know, traditional jazz orchestration. So it started out with a lot of experimentation with weird synths, and I have this device that it's called a Streichfett, I think it's called, or something like that. No, Stimmgerät. It's called a Stimmgerät, and it's an East German piano tuner that I've had for a couple of years. I think the idea was that you would like put this thing on top of the piano, and it has like oscillators inside it and a little speaker, and it's kind of wonky, and you would like hit the pitch thing and tune the piano, right? So this thing's from like the late 60s. That thing ended up becoming like the foundation of all the pads and the chords, and Daniel started calling it the Stasi synth because he knew it was from East Germany. But yeah, that instrument was super helpful. And then just, yeah, modular synths, weird tones. I started life as a saxophone player. I never really intended for this to be a saxophone score. I wrote a lot of the melodies on the sax, and then played, as I tend to do, I played stuff to my wife, Sarah, and she's like, it's great. Well, you know, they always get rid of the sax, don't they? Which is true. So maybe you should like replay it on some synths or something. So I did that. And then I played my first round of cues to Daniel, and he was like, love this, love the melodies, love the vibe. I can't put my finger on it. I'm like, okay, fine. Here's the sax version. He was like, hairs on my neck are standing up. Like, that's it. Like, all right. The saxes are staying. So yeah, it was a real journey.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I absolutely loved like the feel of this movie, with the thriller aspect of it, and how that played out with what you're talking about with the synth and saxophone. I'm curious what kind of challenges came with this job of scoring this movie. Like what's something that you maybe learned while you were scoring this film, and how it maybe grew you as a composer?
I think that I tend to, as I think we all do as composers, when I'm starting out, I tend to throw a lot at something at once, which which is a really useful way to start to get to know a filmmaker. I've always said that it's easier to talk about something than nothing, you know, at least like let's have the beginning of a conversation. And I think that having options like that sax thing was kind of essential in this situation where I don't normally do that kind of thing. And because of that notion of like doing loads of stuff, I do find myself having to kind of, I'll like write things with lots of layers and come up with my melodies that way. And I'm sort of very inspired by sound, and my melodic choices are kind of dictated by that. But it does tend to make quite a thick soup of stuff. And I found myself in this project like really taking a sledgehammer and sort of like peeling things away and trying to find how can I do this, saying the same thing but with the least amount of information. And that was really enjoyable, and like being able to sort of find just like two elements that really speak to each other and not being precious. But I feel like every job you learn something new, and for me I think that's probably what that was on this one.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so we have this background in music scoring, but we also have this jazz influence to it. I guess, where does most of your inspiration as a composer come from? Is it the score world or the jazz world?
I mean, it's kind of all over the place. Like I said, I started out as a sax player. I think by the time I was 19, I realized I wasn't going to be Cannibal Adderley when I grew up, and I got very interested in techno, and I released a bunch of house music in London and other electronic dance music. Then I was the lead singer in a band in New York for a while. And the whole time the only way I really knew how to feed myself was scoring commercials. So I started out doing that. I thought that would get me into scoring movies, which it definitely didn't, but like it trained me very well to sort of treat the job like a job, you know, and like, you know, really just try and sort of push forward. And I think that for me, inspiration comes from, to coin a phrase from my wife, it comes from regular work. Like as a painter, she's very inspired by Francis Bacon, who has this belief, or had this belief, that there's no such thing as the lightning bolt of inspiration. It comes from routine and habit, and beautiful things can happen, but sitting around waiting for the inspiration doesn't always happen. So I feel so grateful that I'm able to constantly be working on some new project, and I think that's really what keeps me going. And my background is all over the place, and I think that that's been really helpful in my career. But the foundation of jazz, like as a kid, learning chords that way and stuff, even if it's got nothing to do with jazz, I do think it's like a really helpful education. Like I was taught classical music at school, and it didn't sink in the same way that jazz did. So yeah,
That's incredible. So in the movie Tuner, we have our main character Niki, who's played by Leo Woodall, and he has perfect pitch and is just like able to identify any chord, any notes, any progression of chords, as is very entertainingly demonstrated in the movie. I'm interested in how much you feel like you might have in common with this fictional character in the movie, or if you thought about any similarities between this character Niki and you as a musician.
yeah. I mean, I wish I had perfect pitch. I
I know.
clearly don't. I do think that you can kind of, when I was playing a lot as a saxophone player, you do, if you're playing all the time, you do start to be able to familiarize yourself with, like, I'm doing this, like if an F sharp is an A, a concert A, and after a while you sort of think that you can hear that. It's just, it comes out of habit. There is this idea that is very strong in the film of like what would happen to your identity if you lost the ability to express yourself in the way that you feel you should. And that's something that I understand. When I was like 17 years old, I had a terrible accident involving these two fingers, where I dropped a concrete bench on them. And I had like a week of being told that they were going to have to lose the fingers. And at this point I was like a very serious, this is what I want to do, you know. And that was a bit rough. And that kind of, I thought about that quite a lot when I was scoring this, about that sort of, it sort of turns into a kind of loneliness, I guess. And that's sort of how I think Daniel expresses what Niki is going through, that it's more than just like losing your gift. You're suddenly kind of alone in the world because you can't communicate in the same way that you grew up thinking that you would be doing. So yeah, that's something I thought about quite a bit. The fingers are fine now, by the way.
Good. I'm happy because we already know acting wasn't what you wanted to get into.
Right, so. Exactly. So back to that job. My father wanted me to be a plumber, so I would have just done that.
That's funny.
Proper job.
Proper job. That's great. I mean, it seems like you've made a great career for yourself out of being a composer. I guess for your career going forward, what do you aspire to do with your composing skills going forward from here?
You know, I'd love to just do more stuff that I've never done before. I've never done a Western. I'd love to get involved in the first record I ever bought was Ennio Morricone's Good, the Bad and the Ugly. So to sort of somehow go down that road would be wonderful. I had a little taste recently. There's a song that I wrote with a friend of mine that came out yesterday on another project, this NCIS spin-off show called Tony and Ziva. And doing that has given me a bit of a like, oh, I kind of want to do that again. Like go back into the, not necessarily performing, but just having something that is a separate project. And it's this thing has been so lovely because it's kind of, we're springboarding it off of this show. But I think I'd like to sort of maybe start to do some of my own stuff that's away from picture, as well as like doing as much stuff as I can in the TV and film world.
That's awesome. Do you have any like recommendations for aspiring composers or people who want to get into film scoring and kind of do what you do?
I think, yeah. I mean, for me, it was, I was fortunate enough, like I said, to do all those commercials and whatnot. That was a great training ground. That world isn't quite the same as it was back when I was starting out. But one thing that I did when I was doing all of that was going to colleges. I was living in New York back then, and like meeting students, film students, and just scoring anything for free, like just getting your feet wet and starting to understand how to communicate with directors, and doing that as soon as possible, because it's different every time. And I feel like for me, 80% of the job is trying to figure out a way of communicating this very abstract idea of music. And yeah, learning the different ways that you can do it is very important.
That's great. I'm gonna bring this interview to a close, but I really just kind of want to know, with this movie having screened here at the Toronto National Film Festival, what do you think is the significance of that? What's the significance of having Tuner playing here in Canada at a festival like this?
I think it's about the reach, the wider reach. You know, it's such an incredibly supportive festival. I had been once before with a movie called Dumb Money, but it was during the strike, so it was a very unusual.
I was
very
here
weird.
for that.
Oh, you were there for right, and I was like
Yes.
walking down the red carpet with Craig. It's just like, it's just you and me, mate. This is a bit weird, isn't it? They're all talking to the composer.
Now that I think, I might have been on that red carpet.
No kidding. Oh, that's so funny.
No, seriously. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Small
like
world.
such a star-studded movie, and you know,
Right.
I remember going to the party afterwards, like, why are the financiers talking to me? Oh, because there's no one else to talk to. No, it was great, but yeah, being there this time, it was kind of like, oh, this is like, it's sort of the position that it has in the calendar as well, I think is very significant at that moment in the year in September. So yeah, it seems like the perfect place to kind of springboard to a wider audience.
Absolutely. Well, I will transparently disclose that I submitted my vote for Tuner as the people's choice, and so I've got my fingers crossed for you guys.
Good man, thank you. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm glad that we had a chance to chat, and you know, I'm wishing your career the best going forward, and also I'm looking forward to where this movie goes from here. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Thomas.
Of course. All right. End recording.